President Donald Trump met with a bipartisan group of lawmakers today for high-stakes talks about immigration. The group is working to reach a deal to protect so-called dreamers after the president announced last year an end to the program that shields them. They're trying to find a compromise before a government funding deadline, January 19th. But the president has a list of demands that he wants addressed in the agreement. He wants funding for a border wall. He also wants to close immigration enforcement loopholes, eliminate the visa lottery program, and the so-called chain or family-based migration. Despite those demands, today, he still insisted he wants a bipartisan bill.
My positions are going to be what the people in this room come up with. I am very much reliant on the people in this room. I know most of the people on both sides. I have a lot of respect for the people on both sides. And what I approve is going to be very much reliant on what the people in this room come to me with. I have great confidence in the people. If they come to me with things that I'm not in love with, I'm going to do it because I respect them.
Joining me now from Politico is Politico reporter Kevin Robillard. So, Kevin, the president wants an $18 million for a border wall in exchange for a Dreamers deal. Where are lawmakers at this point on reaching any sort of agreement on immigration?
I think they're still a little ways off, but clearly they have this deadline, and I think this is something that at least Democrats really want to deal on this, and I think there's elements of the Republican Party that really want to deal on this. Really keeping the Dreamers here and protecting them from deportation and, really perhaps giving them a pathway to citizenship. All of this in public opinion and polling is extremely, extremely popular. So really, this is something where if they fail to do this, it's really going to be a blow really to both parties are going to probably feel some political pain if they aren't able to come up and reach a deal. I
want to play bite for you, Kevin. This comes from House Speaker Paul Ryan talking about reaching an agreement.
We want to have a DACA compromise. We want to make sure that the DACA problem is solved. But as you've heard me say time and again, this has to be balanced so that we don't have a DACA problem 5-10 years down the road.
So what does he mean here when he says another DACA program down the road? Is this signifying that he's actually on the same page as the president?
Perhaps. I mean, look, Republicans to get a bill really, Paul Ryan is basically in this situation where he not only needs a majority of the House, which would be pretty easy to get a majority of the House to vote for one of these bills. Really, House speakers, particularly Republican House speakers in recent years, have tried to always have a majority of the Republican conference backing them as well, any deal they make. So to get that, he's really going to need border security funding. Whether it will be sort of to the same extent the president wants, I think he could probably get a deal without getting everything the president has asked for. And I don't think Paul Ryan would have that same level of demands personally. But it's really, to a certain extent, this depends on what the hardliners in his caucus, like the people in the House Freedom Caucus, want as well.
Yeah, and the impact that they've had on trying to get other legislation through. I want to ask you, though, is there a sense of what impact the immigration deal will have if they're not able to pass this on other legislation this year? I mean,
look, after really we're trying to pass in one case and successfully passing two big bills on basically strictly party line votes last year. I'm talking about Obamacare repeal and the tax reform bill. Republicans have now sort of come out this year and been like, oh, bipartisanship, bipartisanship, bipartisanship. And they're now talking about both immigration and, to a lesser extent, infrastructure as two areas where they could get some bipartisan agreement. So really there could be, and they want bipartisan agreement heading into the midterms because it will improve their own numbers. Right now the Republican Party brand is not strong. President Trump is obviously very unpopular. Congressional Republicans are in some cases even less popular than Trump is. And that's not to say the Democratic Party brand is great, but really congressional Republicans really want these bipartisan deals as a way to build up their own political image before the midterms. And it's really, it'll be difficult to see if they can actually get these because these types of bipartisan deals have just fallen apart over and over again in recent years.
No, I want to switch gears for just a second, Kevin, and ask you about the fallout the president's still facing from the release of Fire and Fury. Yesterday, the publisher's lawyer said that there would be no retraction. When you look at the president's track record, how likely is it that he's going to take legal action? And is there a sense of where the White House is going to go on this?
Based on the president's track record, there's almost no chance he takes legal action. The president has long threatened lawsuits in the press without ever actually following through on them, particularly libel lawsuits and defamation lawsuits. really, under United States law, a libel lawsuit against a public figure, particularly someone as public as the president, would be very, very, very difficult for the president to win. And also, look, the president, like I said, he threatens these types of lawsuits all the time. Most recently, if you think back to the closing days of the 2016 campaign, he repeatedly threatened to sue the woman who accused him of sexual assault. Those lawsuits obviously never happened.
And when you talk about love lost, his former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, I mean, the White House said there's no coming back, it's over. How do you think that this break between the president and Steve Bannon will impact as you go into the political landscape in midterms this year?
It'll have some impact. It's really unclear how much impact it will have, partially because it was never totally clear how much impact Bannon himself would have. Bannon talked a very big game. He said he was going to primary every incumbent Republican senator except Ted Cruz. He was going to, reorient the Republican Party in this nationalist direction and oust Mitch McConnell. And really, the groups he had set up really wasn't clear where they were going to get money to do any of this. He really didn't have staffing for a lot of these groups. He didn't have candidates in some of the races he claimed he wanted to play in. So it wasn't exactly clear, how much he was going to be able to achieve his goals at all. That said, without Bannon out there, it's more likely that establishment Republicans will have Trump's ear when it comes to influencing his role in some of these Republican primaries, which means it could end up with him backing incumbents in some races where they wanted to back incumbents, or back more sort of establishment moderate candidates in some open primaries. But that said, you just have to look at Sheriff Joe Arpaio, the famously controversial sheriff of Maricopa County. He got into the Arizona Senate race today. That's a really good example. Republicans have had this problem with sort of these renegade, insurgent, very conservative candidates getting into primaries. And they had that problem before Steve Bannon emerged onto the stage, and I think it's going to continue after Steve Bannon goes away.
And we heard the president this weekend from Camp David say specifically he's going to weigh in and be active on midterms, so it'll be interesting to watch. Kevin Robillard, thank you so much for joining us, Kevin.
Great to be on.